Ever since its announcement last year in a Nintendo Direct that seems like a lifetime ago, thanks COVID, I have been looking forward to Aztech Forgotten Gods. Aztech is made by Lienzo Studios down in Mexico, and it features an Aztec futurist world where their culture and architecture has shaped the progress of technology, much like Black Panther's take on Afrofuturism. While it boasts a string of amazing boss fights and the flying mechanics feel great, Aztech falls just a bit short in its story, pacing, and combat. The player will take control of Axtli, a determined young woman who is the only daughter of a renowned scientist, Nanshin. During a study at the dig site, Nanshin uncovers ancient technology, including the Lightkeeper, a gauntlet that grants the wearer super strength, flight, and a myriad of other abilities. Axtli is missing an arm, so she finds the gauntlet to be a perfect fit, just as her home is attacked by the first of 6 giants that are awakening. And of course, she's the only one that can stop it. The first fight was exhilarating. Each boss requires a different strategy to take down that asks for the player to do some thinking and fight smarter, not harder. When fighting the bosses, it's often about figuring out how the arena can help you to knock out their defenses, and then you can go in for a hit. The boss fights really are the highlight of the game, but I also have to confess that by the end, Aztech felt a bit like a slog that I needed to get through between these excellent boss fights. Each time she kills a boss, Axtli takes its power and gets a new ability. This is also when you can access a simple skill tree and upgrade abilities using currency gathered from smaller encounters. Each boss fight requires use of not just your newest ability, but a balanced mix of all of your previous ones too. Each fight is well paced, well directed, and it walks the difficulty line perfectly. However, there just isn't much else to the game. Long story beats with unvoiced cutscenes that are, thankfully, skippable, can go on for 20 to 30 minutes, and it's rare that Aztech makes good use of that time. What we get is mostly cyclical dialogue from characters that it becomes increasingly hard to care about. Probably my favorite story bits were Axtli's interactions with Tez, the feathered serpent god that serves as your bemused companion in the fight against the giants. But by the end, I didn't even care about Axtli, and had actually grown quite tired of her. There are simple encounters littered around the small open world, but each one amounts to mash the X button repeatedly for 10 seconds to win. There is no strategy to it. There are also only 2 enemy types that exist in the main world, and they get tiresome quickly. There are additional platforming challenges out there, which I recommend playing, and there are additional horde battles, which I do not recommend playing. Playing through the story and trying out a few of these side quests scattered around had me finishing right at 4.5 hours. There isn't much to the world, to be honest. You can get a new outfit at the store and new hairstyles, but all of these can be bought with coins collected relatively early, so there isn't any progression to unlocking the gear. There also are not many people around town, and the ones that are there are strangely untextured blobs that can't be interacted with. At no time does the world evoke a need to explore. There simply isn't anything to find. Your minimap designates the next story destination, as well as some optional side missions, but as I said, most of these are horde battles where button mashing X is the only way to win. I don't want to be too disparaging about Aztech, because the flight mechanics feel great. In fact, after Spider-Man 2018 and of course Miles Morales, I don't think I've ever had such a good time in a game simply moving around a map. Once you master the flight mechanics of the Gauntlet, learn the physics and momentum rules, and figure out the rocket meter, you'll be blasting around like a pro in no time. It looks and it feels cool, and the flight powers are used intelligently and differently during each of the boss battles. You'll also get access to a super punch, a ground pound, a shield, and more to build out Axtli's kit. Aztech gets major points from me for making the simple act of moving unbelievably fun. I think the story actually does a lot of damage to the overall experience. The ending is strange, poorly written, and basically contradicts all the themes that it had been trying to establish up until that point, and it takes way too long to get there. Axtli's character is pretty inconsistent, and Nanshin seems to change her personality entirely at the end to make the story beat work. The pacing of dialogue between bosses was aggravatingly slow, especially since it felt like most characters could have said their piece in a tenth of the time. There is also an absolutely infuriating labyrinth portion in the middle of one boss fight, where Axtli must walk very slowly through a maze which does not have any hints, and it took me nearly 15 minutes to get back out and into the fight. I want to note that I played Aztech on my PC, and although it is woefully lacking in settings customization, it ran beautifully on my RTX 2060 Super at 1440p, 144 FPS without a single frame rate dip. I must confess the low resolution does sour the aesthetic a little, but the art direction is sound and I love the color palette. I'm not sure if this game will run at 60 FPS on Nintendo Switch, but if it doesn't, I would advise getting it on PC instead. Aztech is a high-intensity action game, and playing it at 30 FPS would notably dampen anyone's experience. I also want to say that Aztech has had some of my favorite music of any games in the last few months, at the very least. It is a strange sort of blend of ancient Aztec sounds and instruments with modern Mexican instruments, and of course, heavy metal. It all comes together so seamlessly, and I want to congratulate composer Diego Borja on a job well done. Aztech has some great ideas, but largely ends up getting in its own way. I honestly may pop it open again just to fly around some more, because now that I've mastered the mechanics, it does make me really feel like an Aztec. Regardless, at under 5 hours, it doesn't ask for much of your time, and like I said, the cutscenes and dialogue, which I think are the game's biggest flaw, are totally skippable. If you're interested in some smartly designed boss fights, I've got a whole slew of them here, but you'll have to put up with some pretty terrible basic encounters too. Overall, I cautiously recommend Aztech Forgotten Gods for anyone looking for some high-octane action. Thanks for watching. Aztech Forgotten Gods will be available on March 10th on Steam and Nintendo Switch. I reviewed Aztech on PC with a key provided by the publisher. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment if you have any questions or comments about this review, and let us know what else you'd like to see from us.